Chapter 3, Laurel's laughable arrival. I'm sure my younger self is just guffawing at me right now for trying to pronounce all these tongue twisters that he's stuck in here. The Yell Box, it is called the Corinthian Yell Box because it was created by a man by the name of Corinthy. Was probably the worst way of communicating, but I needed to contact Laurel some way. I trekked into my room with my hands glued in my pockets. No, I'm not joking. My pockets apparently had glue in them. Let's just say I don't believe that Markle has passed on his little grudge. Thankfully, my door was a crack open, and I didn't need to swing it open with my hands, no longer an option. Those pockets apparently contained Gorilla Glue. Whoa, Mark was serious. Gorilla Glue, how am I going to get that out? I tucked my door open, my way of saying that I leaned over and bumped my nose into the door, and it slowly creaked open. Okay, running into my dresser. My legs were also harder to use because of Mark's little prank. I dumped onto my bed and needed to force myself upward to tumble onto my desk. I stood on my tiptoes to reach one of the desk drawers and pried it open using the finger stubs bumping through my right pocket. Very, very specific here with these events. Very specific in my description. There it was, a small brown raggly box with high sides and a blue rim. Sat there inside the drawer, struggling to withdraw my hands from my pockets, succeeding, and grabbing the box with gluey hands. Why'd you wait until now to take your hands out of your pockets? After all that struggling to get around, to navigate your bedroom, why'd you wait until now? Anyway, I scribbled Laurel on a piece of paper, and hoping the process would work, stuffed the sheet of paper in the box, the name facing me. Then, holding the box up to my mouth and inhaling deeply, I screamed, "Laurel, can you hear me?" I suppose you now know why it is called a yell box. Then I swiveled my head around and pressed my ear to the box, the glue from my hands now stringy and drooping. Finally, after about 3 minutes of hopeless waiting, I heard, "Hello? Hello, Laurel," I screeched back. "Can you hear me clearly?" "Hello? What?" shrieked Laurel's voice back. "Can you hear me?" I yelled. "I can hear. Who?" The voice rang back abruptly, mixed with a roll of static. Apparently I couldn't hear her very well, because I had only put her name in the yell box. Usually, clear communication using this way of contacting required more information written on the paper. Unfortunately, I didn't have that much information on her except her name. Or did I have more useful information? Where is she hearing this from? It's just like a disembodied voice that she's hearing right now. That's kind of creepy. And also, is it really this easy to contact people? Just write their name on a box, and then you just write their name on a box. That's as simple as it gets. How does the box know that it's this Laurel and not a different Laurel? I have so many questions. Anyway, let's see, where am I? Unfortunately, I didn't have that much information on her except her name. Or did I have more useful information? "Samuel," I barked back. "The cat in the fight mouse, black with random white dots. Next to gray cat, the one who kept mentioning the one-syllable, three-letter common word that refers to a different species that sometimes dislikes us." I didn't want to say dog, because for some reason, any mention of that word seemed to be contagious. I know what I was trying to say there, but contagious is not the ideal choice of word. Anyway. "Samuel, black and gray three-letter word species?" Laurel squawked back, sounding confused. "Just wanted to invite you over..." Oh, I thought that was Laurel, it's me. "Just wanted to invite you to our house for a visit, to get over the startle of the, well, D-O, you know, the last letter. Can you come?" I burst out. "What?" Laurel screeched. "Can you come?" I screamed more loudly. Our conversation was gaining intensity. I guess, crowed Laurel. "We're on, and there's my address, which I'm not gonna say out loud, because you guys don't need to know. So there's our address, and then it's in the human world. I had to specify that. I failed to mention what state and country that I lived in, which might be helpful if this is like completely unfamiliar to her, but whatever. Um, okay, shrieked Laurel at what must have been 118 decibels, forcing me to pull the yell box away from my ear. Then I pulled her name out of the box quickly, and it fluttered to the ground. I immediately noticed my mistake. I had forgotten to add the time she could come. That's not the only thing you forgot, but whatever. Since my parents would probably be a bit astounded if a cat came to our door for a visit, the only time that she could safely arrive was midnight. I'm pretty sure your parents are already astounded that you talk to your cat. Wondering why you're not taking your medication. Anyway, my parents probably astounded if a cat came to our door for a visit, the only time she could safely arrive was midnight. But at least I had asked her, even if I had to use the Corinthian yell box instead of the phone. Oh, well, I didn't know her phone number anyway. Yeah, I pointed that out earlier. What was the point of that? Slightly angry at Markle for glopping glue into my pockets, I decided to spread glue on something to stick him up. I'd rather have him stick onto something he would stand on. That would be helpful. So he wouldn't be able to move until throwing himself upon the mercy of the court. I couldn't do it to the floor because it was carpeted and it couldn't be washed off by any standards. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure your standards couldn't successfully clean the floor. Anyway, how about the table? It was wooden, and glue can more easily be taken off wood. Can it? I don't know. No, if I did it to the table, I might get a taste of my own medicine if I set my plate onto the table to eat, and then suddenly be unable to remove the plate. This kid is really thinking ahead, wow. You got a little schemer here. How about a chair? I would spread it on a chair that none of my family ever sits on, then somehow get Markle onto the chair. The chair idea was good enough, and I was tired and wanted to get to bed, so I tried it. Before I retired to bed, Markle confronted me. "What were you doing?" he asked. "You'll see soon," I answered hoarsely. My voice was really scratchy after the experience with the yell box. "Horse?" Markle said. "No, human," I sputtered jokingly. Can you stop it with the puns? That Saturday, I was relieved to find what day it was. You would have thought that the glue in my pockets was enough, but for a little April Fool joke, Markle shoved my bed out the window. How? He's a cat! And at this particular moment, I was in our garden. I didn't care, though. Throwing my sheets aside into a rose bush. Why'd you throw off the sheets? I darted up to the house and threw the door open. Markle was already at the breakfast floor, slurping up some leftover slugs from his bowl. I moved to the breakfast table quickly and pulled the seat aside, slumping into it and gobbling up some pancakes and pineapple I snatched up. Pancakes and pineapple actually sounds like a delectable combination. I should try it sometime. Markle raised one eyebrow at me, obviously bewildered at the fact that I did not seem to understand that he let my bed drop out the window. No, he pushed it out the window with his powerful cat arms. I didn't see how it would affect me, anyhow. It was Saturday, and nothing except death could make me unhappy. And today, Laurel was coming over to our house for a visit, which I hadn't had for years. How do you know that? You remember, you said that you hadn't specified the time that she could arrive. So how do you know she's coming today? Let me look back on our conversation. Yeah, no, I never mentioned that she should come on Saturday, so I have no idea how I am privy to this information, but moving on. I giggled to myself. Maybe Markle could occupy Laurel's house while she was here, so he wouldn't be in the way but still have shelter. Wow. That's so insensitive. Wow. Okay, glad that Markle didn't see what I was thinking. I watched his eyebrow rise higher. Right now, my mother was working in the garden, and my father was reading the paper. Just then, the doorbell rang, which made Markle's fur stand on end, and a slug dropped from his mouth. When Pop was about to go to the door, I looked out and noticed that we were in big trouble. I explained loudly. What an explanation, So thorough. So enlightening. It's the mail! Box for Mom! I can bring it to her, cautiously. I mumbled as I steered Pop out of the room, forcing him to come into my room. There's a loose floorboard I noticed that seems particularly perilous. I breathed as the doorbell continued blaring like a siren. How does a doorbell blare like a siren? What kind of doorbell do you have? Why now, Laurel? I grumbled to myself. Why now? Because you didn't set up a time, you idiots. Think about these things beforehand. As Pop inspected my floor, I slammed the door behind him and raced toward the door, Mark on my heels and appearing extremely suspicious. When I reached the door, I swung it open, and sure enough, Laurel was at the door. But she was not a full cat, standing on her hind legs and reaching the full height of a 15-year-old human. The white cat glanced down at me with glinting eyes. Hello, she said quickly, and her eyes shot toward Markle, whom was still a full cat. Hello, she added toward him, and looking slightly embarrassed. Markle turned into a tall cat that stood on his hind legs, looking just the same species-wise. Can he do that? Can they do that all of a sudden? Wow, alright. Okay. He was lucky to have a distinguishable species for once, as Laurel. He was lucky to have a distinguishable species? What, is he not clearly a cat? I don't get it. Whatever. He looked like the George Washington type, except he was a cat. Yeah, that's a pretty important distinguishing factor. And welcoming blue eyes, hair that appeared to be nothing but a small pile of oversized curlers. Wearing a plain tan jacket over a white shirt, light brown pants, and standing at about 5'7". Okay, so clothes materialized on him as well. We don't want him to be naked here. Standing about 5'7". An astonished expression filled his face, as if his slugs had nearly backed up on him. But when I winked at him, he grinned. Hello, he announced, and gestured to a seat at our table. Sorry, I didn't expect your arrival. Laurel cast me a suspicious glance. I felt suspicious properly that time. A glance that said, You didn't prepare for this or tell your friend about it. Rolling my eyes at my expense, and strolled over to the table, uptight and dumbfounded. Okay. Okay, it's an interesting couple of adjectives put in there. Then my eyes, as if uncontrollably, flicked over to the spot Markle just led Laurel to. The glued chair. It's probably dried by now, there's nothing to worry about. Signaling Markle too lately that there was something wrong, he shrugged deeply and mouthed, Did you invite her? Meanly. Yes, I did. It was supposed to be a surprise, I murmured, Lorelei now looking slightly confused. Markle did not seem to be describing the visit as a pleasant surprise, and I did notice I hadn't exactly gotten ready for it. I could nearly sense Laurel thinking how much men are so unprepared. Never expected sexism from my 10-year-old self, that's unbelievable. She would have been correct about that, but that would only last until she tried to stand up from her seat. What, were you prepared for to sit down? Was this all intentional? This deliberate attempt to get her stuck to a chair for the lulz? These guys are ruthless. So, did you think you wanted to have dinner or something? No, that's Markle. So, did you think you wanted to have dinner or something? Markle asked frantically, shaking. He was a bit white and a bit red, showing that he was very taken aback by the expense that I had set up, an unexpected visit he knew nothing about. By the expense. Sorry, this sentence is totally unreadable. And then the visitor very suddenly arrived when he had not dressed properly, morphed into the correct form, or even made preparations for it while seeming rude for absolutely nothing. I was very sympathetic for him. It's your fault, dude. What was I supposed to do now? I began turning shuddery. I began turning shuddery. But Laurel, where are we? Thankfully, Laurel finally spoke. Well, I guess sort of that's what I was thinking, but don't bother. I also felt badly for Laurel. She was probably taken aback by the fact that we had nicely invited her over, and now Mark and I were suddenly remembering forgotten setups and preparations, and are now rushing around frightened at our plight just to meet her with her pleasure. Okay? And the chair. Oh, well, I suppose that it could have been called a laughable arrival. Roll credits. Alright, that entire paragraph, or even the last, couple of paragraphs, were totally indecipherable. Very sorry about that. It was going pretty good up until then. I don't know. Alright, Chapter 4, Mysterious Meats. This is Mysterious Meats. It's M-E-E-T, parentheses S. So it's only one meat, or possibly several. I think I meant meetings, but I just it's too lazy to write the noun instead of the verb. Okay, just then the doorbell rang. Startled, Markle dropped the fine china he was carrying in his hands, and Laurel cringed. Racing over to the door, I swung it open, and I greeted the visitor only to find there wasn't any. Confused, I pushed the door closed. No worries. Kids were probably going around ringing doorbells on people and running off again. Markle followed behind me just as I closed the door, his fur sticking on end. He seemed to be angry with me, but he would never do anything to me when a visitor was here. Maybe I should keep Laurel in our house for long enough, as I wanted my life to be. Could she stand a couple 52 years? Nevertheless, I answered my cat. No one was there, I said, and then strolled back into the kitchen with Mark to assure Laurel the same. 5 seconds later, the doorbell rang again. Stumbling over to the door, I pried it open to nothing. Again. 5 minutes later, the doorbell rang, and I darted toward it and flung it open. Nobody stood at the door. Exasperated, I called for Markle. Hey, Mark, I told him. Can you stand outside and guard the door? Markle stared at me in sarcastic disbelief. Okay. If I was writing today, I'd say mock disbelief, but whatever. Actually, I'd rather he'd stand outside and stand put outside. But let's not increase the block of hatred between us, shall we? Misspelled hatred. Moving back into the kitchen while Markle hesitated near the front door, I caught sight of her turned around, staring out the window. Looking over, I could barely see her lip trembling. Laurel, I stammered. For some reason, I could pronounce everything but her name when she was present. What's the matter? She whipped her head around. Sliding aside, she pointed out the window, and I narrowed my eyes. Look, she said, and I looked out the window. The President of the United... the President of the United States of America was staring back at me. Tall and thin, he was a lanky man with black eyes, which looked like sharp brown walnuts that pierced through you like a hawk's eyes. They were narrowed on me as my eyes were on him, as if I was having an official State Department staring contest. He wore blue linen pants and a blue leather jacket over a white flannel shirt tucked in. The second he saw me, he took off toward the back of the house, where Mom was working in the garden. Laurel's lip was trembling nervously as my eyes trailed off to where the President had gone. Suddenly, I heard a loud blaring at the doorbell again. Do you have a foghorn in place of your doorbell or something? After sitting in disgusted, annoyed disbelief for about 10 seconds, I raced over to the door and opened it slowly. Who in the fabled feline forces are you? I yelled, annoyed. I've got to use that someday. Standing there, looking defiant and determined, stood the dog. Standing there stood the dog, whose foot slid between the door and doorpost as I attempted to slam the door in his face. Recalling an old slip-up created by Markle, I screeched, "What is wrong with this thing?" and continuously banged the door into his foot, which didn't budge. People putting their foot into the door, between the door frame and doors, a pretty random thing to have had experience with. Just saying. Then I took after my own creation and tickled his foot. Then stepped on it. When nothing happened. The foot made no sign of motion. Maybe I had completely damaged it into paralysis, I thought hopefully, and was answered my wonder as the foot kicked the door open, swinging so high it also managed to kick my face. Letting out a scream of pain, I flew all the way into the living room, which was right alongside the kitchen. That doesn't seem physically possible. Laurel noticed his presence and became devastated. "Did you invite him too?" she asked shakily. I had been about to say no, but changed my mind quickly. Yeah, sure. I realized a second later that this reply was a mistake. Yeah, you realize that this guy terrifies everyone? Saying you invited him might not conduce to a good reputation on your part. Just saying. And that's where it ends. Looks like this story's over. So that was my cringy childhood story for today. Hope you all enjoyed it. I certainly did. Towards the end there were a bunch of just really poorly worded sentences. And I'm happy that I've gotten past my old tendency to use vocabulary words inappropriately out of their proper context, because that was an embarrassing mistake that I had committed a few times throughout this writing. It's a nice little experience. I hope you guys agree. So, that's it. Goodbye.